Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 13th Man podcast. It's our first episode in a couple of months as things have kind of been busy on both ends for us, but we are back. We should be posting regularly again, but we have a lot to talk about today, mainly about the huge news that dropped the other day, CFL XFL merger or whatever you want to call it, partnership, whatever. They've agreed to formal talks, and now people are starting to kind of kick tires at what this could possibly mean.
How do you want to start this conversation?
This quote from Tim Baines: "If CFL and XFL team up, there's a real chance 3 downs, wider and longer field, Rufus, 12 players on the field, etc. will be gone. You can bet an alliance would be 4 downs, 11 players on the field, same as the National Football League," which I'm not about.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, to be honest with you, Shane. Why do I feel so confident that we're going to be looking at Canadian football on an American field?
I hope we see a Canadian game on an American field. I think if you put the CFL, I think this is the problem, is that we have this construct that the American game is so much better. You know, the way the states have it is so much better and so much greater than the Canadian game. I don't think that's true at all. I think that people have it's been marketed in such a way that people believe it. But if we were to bring the CFL game down to the States and market it properly, I think people would actually start to realize that the CFL game, the way the CFL game is played, is a more exciting and better a better game of football than the NFL.
The only reason that I think that it has to be an American field is simply because of let's look at the venues that the XFL played in last year. I think the only one that would actually be able to successfully convert into a CFL field is Dallas, because they played in the Rangers' old baseball stadium there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think St. Louis, if you were to put it where the Rams played, there's enough room in that arena.
I looked at pictures of that place. It doesn't, I think wide enough, sure. I don't think that's long enough.
I don't know. Reggie Bush ended his career because there was a good 5-10 yards of cement between the back of the end zone and where fans were sitting.
Yeah, but you need an additional 30 yards in length, and I really doubt they have that.
I mean, you could definitely make it work if you wanted to. I just don't see why the CFL would bend into making you're literally going to slap everyone who loves the CFL for the reasons that I just laid out in the face for what? To join an alliance with a league that has survived 1.5 years of existence.
Yeah, you can look at it like that, but the other thing you can look at the XFL was pretty successful this time around. Would you not agree there?
No. Attendance dropped. Literally, attendance was dropping across the league week to week. Viewership was dropping week to week.
TV attendance wasn't dropping.
Attendance.
St. Louis was about to open up more.
St. Louis hated the NFL and they were going to support football anyways. But if you look across the league, attendance was dropping week to week. TV viewership was dropping week to week. Spring football and spring American style football does not have a chance to survive in the States. So why are we trying to force it down people's throats? Why not give them something new, something fresh, something exciting like CFL football? Because there's nothing like CFL football in the States. And if you don't want to compete directly with the NFL, why would you make it like the NFL? Why not bring in the CFL football and basically market yourself as we're football, we're not NFL football, we're different. There's flavor to our game.
As I continue to share this into Facebook groups, because Facebook made this so friggin' difficult on us for no reason, Shane. It drives me absolutely nuts, okay? There's so many things that bother me about this, but there's also part of me that tells me the CFL wouldn't be doing this kind of thing if they didn't have to. I think that they are in a position right now financially where I don't know if they would survive to next year.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. But here's the thing: a lot, and this was just brought up. I saw a tweet of it from the defensive line coach at the at UBC. 4-down football, for a lot of CFL players would not work because a lot of these players, and we've talked about it before, the CFL game involves a completely different skill set than the NFL game. So you're going to say that, okay, we're going to make this an NFL style game, expecting these players to be able to play an NFL style. If you were to, like, how many times have we looked at a player being like, if he played in the NFL, he probably wouldn't have success?
Yep.
In my opinion, there's a lot of receivers that, like Brandon Banks, in my opinion, I like him. He's a great player. He would be one-dimensional. He would be probably one of the most underused players in the NFL. Like
I agree, 100%.
Deontay Spencer, another example of someone, in my opinion, is being underused in the NFL with Denver. He could be so much more than a punt returner or a kick returner, but because the field is so small, he doesn't have that wiggle room that he had up in the CFL. If you were to put, in my opinion, if you were to put Tyreek Hill in the CFL as a slot back, giving him a running start instead of having him start from a flat stance, he'd be one of the best players to ever lace him up in the CFL.
Probably. I mean, you're talking about a guy whose nickname is literally the Cheetah. The guy is so fast.
But that's the thing, is like there's some players that having that extra, 5-yard running head start into defenders as a slot back is good for their game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why you want to change it. I don't know why. If you look at the CFL and you're like, if you're on the CFL, why you look at it being like, we don't need to change our game to fit the U.S. market, because you know what's going to happen. No spring league has survived.
Now,
even the college football is different than the NFL.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I think about too, and you can go on the XFL's Twitter account when they post that they're going to be working with the CFL. Everybody's under the assumption that CFL is going to American rules.
Yeah,
I just can't see that being the case. Like Trevor Harris said it too, I believe. He said he named off all those spring football leagues that have been in the U.S. And he said that one failed, that one failed, that one failed, that one folded, that one didn't work. And then he's like, yeah, well, okay, the CFL's been around for 100 years. Clearly someone's doing it right and someone's doing it wrong. And while the CFL's business structure and all that is completely broken, it's terrible. It's lasted. It stood the test of time. And, it's been on the brink of death more times than you can possibly count. But it's something is working and it's clicking because it's still here. I don't believe the CFL is going to give away everything to go join the XFL. I think that's such a stupid notion. That's not going to happen. But sometimes things like this are needed, right? This could be this very well could be the end of the CFL, right? One way or another. But the other thing you can look at, this could also be the beginning of the CFL taking the next step to relevance, if this works out the way that you hope it does for the CFL.
I think if this was under Vince McMahon, I think it would be a lot more serious, as we're losing a lot of what makes the CFL great.
Mm-hmm.
But with The Rock and his, known love for the CFL and respect towards the CFL, I think there would be more of a willingness to adapt CFL rules.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%.
I think there is more of a chance that we see CFL football, at least the big parts of like personally, I would have no care about the Rouge. I really don't care for the Rouge. Really, it makes for some interesting endings depending on if you're down by one or not. You might just want to kick, or if you're tied, you might just want to kick it through the end zone instead of risking a field goal. Whatever the case may be, it makes for some interesting endings every time, every now and then. Personally, the 3-point play in the XFL, I would love to see on a Canadian, like on a CFL field. You start at the 10-yard line or 15-yard line. You have the extra 20 yards in the end zone to get a 3-point play. So instead of it being 7-0, it's 9-0. Like things like that, I would love to see in the CFL. So if you can adapt some of the XFL rules and maybe get rid of some of the CFL ones like the Rouge. I wouldn't really want to get rid of the yard start because I think that makes a big difference in the trenches, honestly. But there are some rules that I would be okay getting rid of.
And I mean, the buy-in from some of the teams around the league, like everybody kind of acknowledges that some of the franchises aren't in the best spots. Like I think Tampa Bay was really struggling with their attendance. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe they were one of the worst teams.
Yeah. So there's a couple of other teams, and you highlighted one that doesn't have a team, and that's Oakland. Like St. Louis and Oakland, to me, are the two markets that if the CFL could get into, they could build some legitimate rooting interest in the U.S. and San Diego as well. Now, can you do that? I think the XFL is your best route to get into St. Louis, Oakland, and San Diego. You can easily get teams, out of Tampa Bay. Maybe you get that team out of New York and you put it in, somewhere else. But also, I don't think having a CFL team in New York would be a bad option either. And
I think and I brought this up is that if there's a chance, let's say you merge with the XFL, the teams, they're 9 teams or 8 teams, however many you want, become property of the CFL. Just like any other merger, we had the IHL move into the NHL, we had the AFL, NFL merger, all that fun stuff. They all became property of the one league. Let's say you take Tampa, move them to Halifax. There you go. Play out of Moncton for a little bit till you get a stadium ready. There you go. You got your Atlantic team. Then you bring in, so you're at what, 5-5?
Yeah, so you start with 8. Yeah, if you were to absorb all the XFL teams, you start with 18 teams. Yeah, I think is what you're looking at. Each league has 9 teams, I think.
I think it's 8 and 9 because
8 and 9. So either way, you're at 17. Like I think 17.
You can move Halifax. You can move Tampa to Halifax, whatever. Get the shooters up and running. You don't have to take all the other 7 teams. If you want to split it down the middle, like literally East versus West, and have 8 versus 8, all you need is 3 of the most marketable teams or 3 of the best teams in each side of the country to make it work. So if you feel like St. Louis, maybe move team to Oakland and San Diego. There you go. You have your 3 West teams. And then you have DC, New York, and I believe there was another one that.
Well, you're also forgetting the Wildcats in Los Angeles right now.
Yeah, but I mean, realistically, were they? I don't think they weren't doing very well either in attendance.
I don't believe so, but.
So you can move Los Angeles down to LA, and I mean you can always move Winnipeg over to the east like you have before if there's not enough teams in the east. Like you can make it work in a 2-division set, right? Like it is possible.
You could theoretically, if you wanted to, make the Canadian division and an American division. That would just get a little bit more travel-y. But I feel like keeping the rivalries, in Canada. So I still want to see the Argos and the Stampeders go toe-to-toe. That's a classic game, I want to see that. So I don't know. I don't know if I want to see Ottawa play New York a ton.
No, but I mean, let's say you have 16 teams. You dissolve 2 of the XFL teams, the 2 of the least marketable teams, whatever. You have 16 teams. You have 8 versus 8 in 20 and 18 games. You're playing 14 games. Really, again, if you do 2 versus 2, you're playing 14 games against your own division. And then, you have 3 games against the West Division.
Yeah. I mean, no. Yeah, I think for sure, though, right? What if you were the CFL right now, the Baltimore experiment worked pretty well for you. Why? Because it was a good market for football, right? They didn't care. American football, Canadian football didn't matter, right? You got to find more markets that are like that. St. Louis already proved that they are one of those markets. I think 100%. There's an appetite for football back in Oakland. I think they'd support no matter what came there, right? That's a great football city. 100%. And I think San Diego would have an appetite for that as well. I mean, they didn't really prove it with the Fleet in the Alliance when they had them, but that league was also Let's
kind
be
of
fair,
atrocious.
Shane. That was a Bush League.
Yeah, it was
Bush League
atrocious.
league. Yeah.
But I think if you were to put a team, I don't know, San Diego, Oakland, St. Louis would be my top three. Maybe Portland, Oregon. You know, they don't really have anything outside of
The Ducks.
the Trailblazers
And the Ducks.
Yeah, like you are like Oregon, the University of Oregon and Oregon State University are hotbeds of football. So why not put a team there? I think if you were to put a team in, I don't know, Green Bay, I think Green Bay could support a second team.
But it also depends when you're running this league, because if you want to go if you want to push the CFL schedule up a little bit, like you've been talking about for years, you start it in April and you end in
like September,
a September or October range. All of a sudden, you know, there's football year round for the people in Green Bay. If you wanted to do something like that,
yeah,
you could even go back to Baltimore, a place that's tried and true and works. So, like, you know, there's obviously clear hurdles to clear with things like that.
Put an actual team in Detroit instead of the god awful Lions. Give Detroit fans or Michigan fans actual reason to celebrate football.
Now, I'm not. You can't. You also can't just go to all the NFL markets, and that's why St. Louis, San Diego, and Oakland work so well. Those are markets you want to get into before the NFL gets into there.
Again.
You want to sink your teeth in, because we all know that St. Louis, with the way they support the Battlehawks, is going to get an NFL team again, right? I think everybody understands that.
I don't think so. I think St. Louis fans were doing it in spite of the NFL. I really don't see the NFL going back to Oakland, San Diego, or St. Louis. I think Las Vegas or Oakland moving to Las Vegas really put a spurn in relocation.
Yeah.
So I don't see it happening.
And the thing too, I mean, if you're the CFL and you're looking to get to Oakland, the stadium isn't an issue for you. You know, you'd rather have a new one, but you mean to tell me you wouldn't play out of there?
No, I mean, at this time you play where you can play and then you work around it.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that if you look at the American side of things, there are teams that probably could support an NFL team that don't have an NFL team that may want an NFL, like may want football. Like, why not go to South Carolina? They have nothing down there. It's
other
all
than
in
racing.
North Carolina. Yeah, but they have no football in South Carolina. You know, I think if you go back to Louisiana or Tennessee, some of the American, like some of the NFL markets would be doable in terms of having a second team, in my opinion. But I would avoid, Dallas. I would avoid anything in Texas. Honestly, I would have just straight out avoid at this point. Unless it's the Roughneck, who seemed to thrive last year, so maybe you keep them around.
That's what I'm saying. I think that Dallas team is that stadium though. That's really not great for football.
No, but I think overall, like you could do it. You could put another team. You put it in some colleges that don't have NFL teams. You put it in college teams, or like university areas that don't have a team.
And that's kind of what the Alliance tried, right? They played out of Birmingham, which some smaller school in Alabama plays at.
I mean,
they played it.
CFL did that and it failed.
Yeah, they did Salt Lake City at the University of Utah. Am I an idiot?
I'm not sure. I didn't really care much for that league.
Yeah, no, that league was.
Yeah, like it was gone.
Like some of the
finished was before it even got going. In my opinion, that's what
some of the names in that league too, like the Arizona Hotshots, the Salt Lake City Stallions. Though those helmets were absolutely amazing. But like, man, that league was something else. That's what you have to avoid. I think CFL fans hated the XFL so much because it looked like there was a genuine hope that it wouldn't suck. You know what I mean? Like, I wrote that article for 613 Sports about how the XFL might pose like a serious threat to the CFL if it can get going. And I think although numbers were dropping, I think it had a legitimate foundation to carry itself through and exist for more than a couple of years.
I mean, I think the XFL had a chance. And here's the thing: why come up to Canada when you could stay in the States and play if you're an American player,
Yep.
right? So if you're the CFL and you're looking, and the XFL is dead set on playing in 2022 one way or another, if it's in affiliation with the CFL or not, you are allowing, you're basically giving away a chance to keep all your star talent. Here's the thing. Let's say Bo Levi Mitchell hits free agency, and all you can offer him is, I don't know, $300,000 to stay in Canada,
which is a significant paid decrease from what he is getting right now, because he's still above 500,000, I believe.
I think
if you looked at his revised numbers.
I'm not really sure. I've been taking a look at his numbers recently. Let's say he's getting 300,000, 400,000 kind of thing, and he gets an offer from, I don't know, let's say the Houston Roughnecks to go back to Texas and play for 750,000. 700, and not just 750,000, 750,000 US dollars.
Yeah.
So why not? Why would he have any? He has no obligation to stay in Canada. So why not go back to Texas, play in the XFL for a couple 100,000 more? And it's a lot of a couple 100,000 more because it's in American dollars.
Exactly. Now that's the other thing that's interesting to bring up, because this is one of the things that went through my head immediately upon hearing this and thinking, if there's a merger, we see it with the Blue Jays, we see it with the Raptors, and we see it with the Canadian NHL teams. It is difficult for them to sign free agents. How quickly would the American teams become the dominant force if there was a merger of the two leagues and they didn't create some kind of cap rule that specifies your cap depending on your taxes in either your province or your state? To me, I think that would be a massive issue.
Yeah, I think you could always find ways around it, right? Like the NHL has found ways around it. The MLB has found ways around it. The NBA has found ways around those kind of issues. So you can
kind of, but not really. The Raptors were still screwed. The Jays, the first big free agent the Jays have ever signed was George Springer, and they had to way overpay to get him. It's not easy for Canadian teams to bring American players up north. It's virtually impossible.
Yeah, I think the problem with the Blue Jays and whatnot and the Raptors is they also have sucked for so long.
Yeah, but we're talking about Kawhi leaving after winning a championship to leave Canada.
I wouldn't really use Kawhi as the best example as a player who went home. It's not like he left Toronto to join Boston. He went to the Clippers. He went home to LA. I can't really we've re-signed DeRozan. We re-signed Lowry. We had Boston.
Those are also guys who have already been in. Once you're in, right? A lot of guys don't have problems once they figured out that, okay, this isn't so bad. It's the guys that have, and that's what makes George Springer so special to Jays fans. The fact that he left Texas, right, came to free agency and picked Toronto. That's what makes him so special, because nobody does that. Nobody ever looks in the eyes of the other bidding teams and says, I'm going to Canada. It's just it's pretty much unheard of for American players.
Don't suck. I think that's what it comes down to. If you were to build a championship team, let's say if you had the upstart San Diego, San Diego Ships or whatever, versus playing for them versus playing for a championship caliber, Calgary Stampeders. If you want to win, you're going to go to the championship team.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would just force Canadian teams to be better. The competitive level will increase. Football in Canada would increase, in my opinion. The talent, we would actually be able to see a true Canadian talent making more of an impact in the CFL than we do now.
Yep. I look at this, and I honestly, when we posted that article yesterday that Brian did for us, which by the way was fantastically fast. I'm so happy with that. But the comments on that we got, Shane, honestly, it's very disappointing to see the amount of CFL fans that are slamming the door shut on this before ever listening to see what's going to happen. Because this could be the best thing to ever happen to the CFL if it is done right.
It could be. It 100% could be. But I think fans are worried about Americanizing the game. And I think they have a right to be worried.
Look, I'll propose you this alternative. If this doesn't happen, why don't you worry about having a league next year?
I mean,
I think that's the point we're at. So would you rather Americanize our Canadian game, or would you rather not have a league? And if you say you'd rather not have a league, then you don't have to watch.
But I'd rather not Americanize the game to the fact that it's not even a resemblance of what the game was.
I agree with that. I would rather.
But here's the thing, though. Again, the American game isn't good. Like, if you actually take the game to, like, if you watch an NFL game, take away all the production value that the NFL pours into it, just watch snap for snap a CFL and an NFL game, and even a college game. You put an NCAA game on. The NFL game is the worst out of the three. 100%. 100%. By pace, by play, everything. It is the worst. So why should the CFL game, which in a lot of people's opinion is the better game, have to Americanize itself when it has been proven that other American Football League who follow the NFL umbrella don't survive?
I'll phrase it like this. If my options are A, play American football in Canada, and then I have something to go to in the summer, or B, have nothing, well, option A looks pretty good. Now, in an ideal world, the CFL and the XFL merge to just become the CFL. All of the Canadian rules stay the same. The field stays the same size. That's what we all want, right? I think we can all agree that that is exactly what we all want. But let's be realistic. There's no way that's going to happen like that. We're going to have some give.
The XFL is nothing right now.
I get that. But it's also not possible to put a CFL-sized field in the majority of the XFL venues.
So don't go. That's the thing, though, is that if you're going to Americanize the game, like, why bother taking away things that make the game unique just so it fits this mold that people think is good football?
Can we not find a way to compromise on this, though?
I think we can, but I think there's certain fundamentals that in my opinion, the XFL needs the CFL more. You folded halfway through a season. You know, there's more of a guarantee the CFL, like the CFL plays in 21 than there is the XFL plays in 22. So why should the CFL, like, realistically, why should the CFL have to give up the most to make a partnership work? You know, they're at an advantage. They have the leverage right now. You know, you have CFL 2.0 to fall back on. If it comes down to joining the XFL or starting up a CFL 2.0 league in Europe, if it meant playing with the same rules, I think more people would be interested in CFL 2.0 in Europe than it would be merging the XFL.
I'm just wondering at what point do people say they're out, right? So if we say, okay, Canadian rules but American field, I have a feeling that most people are out.
It wouldn't work. It would not work, though.
Okay, so let's say then, what if we go to a field that is the same width in Canada, right? Shorten the end zones to 15 yards. Is that too far?
No, I think
because that's essentially what Toronto had to do. By the way, their end zones were 17 yards.
If they were to put down the end zones down to 15 yards, I don't think anyone's going to care. I think the end zones are one thing that, okay, shrink it down 5 yards each, whatever. It's not going to make the end of the world. It's not that big of a difference. Most of these players are used to playing in a 10 yard end zone anyways, so going down to 15 doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you take away that extra 10 yards in the middle of the field, take away the extra, I don't know, like, what is it, 20, 30 yards side to side?
Yep. I think we're 65, while the NFL is like 50 or something.
Yeah, so that changes the game drastically. You know, we talk about wide side throws all the time. You know, we talk about quarterbacks not being able to make that wide side throw, like how those wide side throws are dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's no longer an issue. Those wide side throws no longer become that big of a deal because you've shortened the yard, like you've shortened the field. Like it drastically changes the game once you start messing with the dimensions of the field, because then you actually lose a player. Like it just, I don't know. I feel like if you were to switch a lot of this field stuff, you mess with the entire game.
Let's also think about it this way, right? I think the end zones in Canada are one of the most unique things about the game. So if an American team wants to come in and they can do the whole field, but their end zones have to be 15 yards while everybody else has 20, fine, right? Because in Montreal, their end zones for the last 10 yards are slanted inwards.
Yeah.
The field dimensions are different in Montreal than they are anywhere else. Toronto has 17-yard end zones, if you didn't know that. They're 3 yards shorter than anywhere else. So if an American team says we have to have a 15 or 16-yard end zone to make it work, fine. I don't care.
100%. I think if you I have no issues with the end zones being changed. I think if you make them all 15 yards, I don't care. Don't touch the actual length of the field from goal line to goal line, and don't change the width.
So you still want an 110 yard?
Because that's what makes game that's what makes our game unique.
Right.
That makes the game the way it is. It wouldn't be the same if the field was different.
What we just did there, Shane, is a nice compromise, and I think that's what's going to have to happen. Things like that.
I think people are worried that like a nice compromise is going to be 4 downs, 11 men on the field.
Well, that's not a compromise though. That's just going with whatever the XFL wants to do, and
that's what people are worried of.
I don't think that's going to happen though, and people are so quick to say that Randy Ambrosie is an idiot because they didn't play this season. But he used to play in this league too, right? He's not going to go alienate the entire CFL fan base to have a chance to work with a league that's been around for half a year.
Yeah, 100%.
That doesn't sound realistic at all. That's not going to happen. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I think people just they don't trust the commissioners like any league, right? When it comes to this thing, if this was with the if you were to talk about a merger in the NHL now, people would still be hesitant if it meant rule changes. But again, I'd rather not change the 3 downs. I think, in my opinion, I've played both. I've played 3 down and 4 down football. I've been on both sides of the ball playing 3 down and 4 down football. There is something just more. There's more pressure. There's a lot more intensity when it's 3 downs because you understand that, hey, I only have 2 chances to get a first down.
Yeah. I want to quickly point out what Mark said here too, about having no league than going to 4 downs. Mark, I respect your opinion on this, and I think this is the opinion of many, many CFL fans around the place. They don't want to see their version of the game die. But for me too, I love both games. Love the NFL, love college football, love the CFL. It would hurt me more than anything to not have football to go to in the summer. That, to me, would be the hardest part. So if that meant that we had to play the American game here, as much as I would hate that happened, I would still go. I'd still be happy that we had a league. And this isn't to, crap on your opinion or say you're wrong or anything, because I respect that. I understand people that think like that. I want football above all else.
Yeah, I think for myself, it's the same way. I want football, but I think, and here's the thing that you have to look at when you consider changing the CFL game. You have to expect the universities to change their game.
Yeah, and all the way down.
Yeah, that's in it. So if you're Football Canada, you're looking at the CFL being like, hey guys, there are leagues, there are senior leagues that play 4 downs. They play American rules because for older gentlemen, it's easier. It's a more relaxed game, so to speak, when it's 4 downs.
I don't know if relaxed and football go in the same sentence unless it's two-hand touch on the school playground.
Lack of a better term, it's more relaxed.
Less football. Running, less, I get a cardio involved, I guess, if you want to go that far.
So most senior leagues play 4 downs. So So that you don't really care about. But if you're Football Ontario, where you have the CGFL, who plays, I believe, 3 downs, the Ontario Premier League that plays 3 downs. You have, UOA that play 4 downs, like 3 downs. Like all these leagues play 3 downs. So if the CFL is going to 4 down football, all your minor associations, everything below that has to go to 4 down football, and that's and then not even that, they have to go down to 4 down fields. They have to change up all the rules on players. Like, I think you're going to 4 down football and changing the dimensions of the field and whatnot will hurt football in Canada than it will help it.
I agree. I also want to point something out that I think is very, very interesting, because the XFL decided that they're going to put their 2021 plans on hold, right?
Yeah, the 2022 plans, until
so that's all on
end
hold
of the formal talks.
Yeah. Who's not on hold here?
The CFL.
Exactly. What does that tell me? That means that one league is prepared to go forward without anything done, and one league maybe isn't.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, is that the CFL has come out, teams have come out being like, hey, this is what's happening, but we are still committed to a 2021 season. Like,
yep.
These talks are going to go on because we feel like it's important in the growth of our game, but our commitment is still towards the 21 season.
Yeah, I'm like I keep going back to the just kind of open your mind a little bit, because for me, I saw this news and I'm excited, right? I think that this is a great way for the CFL to make their way back into the States, gain a little bit of relevance. And you know what? I saw today, Shane? I saw some people that I know that normally never talk about the CFL actually interested in what was happening. That is a massive step for the people that don't care at all to take an interest and say, wow, that's like really cool that the 2 leagues might merge. Like, I suggested, hey, if this happens, like let's go down to Dallas or whatever, and we'll go to a Red Blacks game. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like an awesome time. These are people that would never do this otherwise.
Like, here's the thing I've said. You go to a CFL game, I've talked to people who, I've worked with, and they're like, is the CFL game worth going? And I'm like, once you go to a CFL game, you'll understand my love for the game, and you'll understand why everyone, like, there's so much love for the game in Canada. And they go, and they love it. They fall in love with it. They start playing, they start watching on TSN, they start following it a little bit more. Because the game itself, the CFL is a game, and I don't mean to hate on the NFL experience, but I don't like being to almost every sporting event in Ottawa. There is really nothing like a CFL experience.
I think what makes it different too, like I've been to Buffalo and the experience is amazing. I think Buffalo is one of the more personable NFL experiences.
100%.
But it's very commercial. You know what I mean? Like it's very industrial kind of feeling. There's just so much money involved in it. But when I go to a Red Blacks game, or when I go to a 67s game, or when I went to Calgary for a game or Hamilton for a game, it's very like community. Everybody's friends.
I think we can all agree that we've met some very great people in the CFL community since we've started, like really not just since we started the podcast, but our experience
since the Red Blacks came back.
Like the CFL community is nothing like the NFL community.
It's amazing to me. Like when Red Blacks fans, we get on a bus every year and we go to Montreal and we go tailgate for a couple of hours before. The Montreal fans are amazing to us. Always.
Like, I have not had a bad experience with an actual fan of the game.
Except for the people who dumped beers on our head after Ottawa beat Montreal in that game where Devontae Dedmon scored a couple of touchdowns on kick returns. They were mad at us that night. But like other than that, and the guy who called us a bunch of pricks in Hamilton, but regardless.
Okay, every fan base has its bad apples. That's exactly just how it goes.
But
I think overall, the CFL community is super strong.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And then, you get players out in the community and stuff, and you get players talking to you after practices. And like, I feel like the XFL had its weird quirks, but it had people that latched on, right? People loved it for what it was. I think they would love it and attach onto it the same if it was the CFL game being sold to them the way the XFL sold their stuff. Different, but competitive and entertaining. And I think people look at the CFL and they go, that's Bush League. Rules are stupid. Games suck. But if you can just convince people to watch it once and you can sell it like the XFL sold it when they came back, I think you're in. I think you'd have fans.
You have the best person to do it in The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think if you're looking for a spokesman of football in Canada and the XFL, The Rock is the best person to do it. Like, I think it was Andy Fever who came out being like, hey, if the XFL and the CFL merged and The Rock and Danny Garcia and co were still part of the league, right? Like, they were still part of the day-to-day operations and they were working with Randy Ambrosi and whatnot. Like, we could probably get a deal with Under Armour. Not just Under Armour, Project Rock. Like, the Rock's project, like, collection. That, personally, one of my favorite Under Armour collections. I love Under Armour. Imagine having CFL gear with the Project Rock logo on it, with your favorite team. Having, as much as I like New Era, I hate their merchandise. It's not good. It doesn't fit properly. Like, it's a weird cut. It doesn't fit everybody. Like, it's not a generous fit for a lot of people, especially bigger guys, in my opinion. Like, an XL fits like a double XL fits like an XL or a large sometimes. So, personally, I think if New Era were to come in, if you have like an Under Armour jersey that has the Under Armour logo on the neck at the back, but the Project Rock logo on the front on the tag, people would buy that. I think putting his name on the CFL would make stores would be willing to have it in their store. Like, companies would love to sell this stuff.
And is Danny Garcia not like a business genius too?
She's a genius. She is one of the smartest business, not just business women, like business people ever. From what I've looked up on her, what I've read about her, what I've heard about her, she is just a pure business genius.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's also important to understand that this might not be a merger. This might simply be the two leagues putting their heads together and saying, okay, how can we grow football for both of our leagues? I don't think that's what it is. I think it's probably a merger, but that it could also be that. And having her input, having her help you out, not a bad idea. I'll take that. If she wants to be on board with the CFL, any day of the week, you can come do whatever you want.
Here's my expectation for a merger. Randy Ambrosi handles the day-to-day nitty-gritty, union stuff. He is the face of the league. Him and The Rock are the faces of the league. But Randy Ambrosi deals with the business side of the unions with, the CFLPA. Him and Danny Garcia kind of work together. But Danny Garcia's and The Rock's, they do the promoting. They do the marketing. That's what they deal with. Mm-hmm. So you have these three individuals working together in separate areas of the game to help grow the league. So, and like we all gushed. I think Ashton Kutcher wore a Red Blacks shirt on the ranch, right? Imagine if Dwayne The Rock Johnson, I don't know, Jumanji 3, he's wearing like a CFL shirt or something at the beginning.
Every single cast member has something. All of the CFL teams represented, all the XFL teams are represented. Like, just go for it.
That's the thing, though. So, like, you with The Rock on board, you'd be able to sneak like XFL, CFL stuff into his movies, into his TV shows, into his product. Like, it would be the best thing for the CFL. Yeah.
Yep. I also want to. Mark responded to us here. That comment's a little bit long to put up on screen because it'll take up the whole thing. Yeah. But he mentions, like, for him, the things that need to stay are the Grey Cup and the 3 downs. For me, the 3 downs, I want them to stay, right? I would absolutely be devastated if they were gone. I would still go to a game if it was 4 downs. The Grey Cup for me is non-negotiable. That absolutely has to still be involved no matter what. Whether you make it for your championship game, which I think is what you have to do. Absolute worst case scenario is if you go an American and a Canadian division, whoever wins the Canadian division would win the Grey Cup, which I still think sucks. I think that absolutely sucks. There's no way that trophy, which is one of the oldest trophies in sport, should lose its meaning. But it has to stay. That's not
100%.
negotiable for me at all.
Also, I think one thing that bugs me when it comes to the Grey Cup is people automatically put it with the CFL, and it kind of bugs me because that's not.
It's not the CFL's. It was supposed to be for hockey.
No, it was supposed to be for football.
No, it was created to be hockey.
Oh yeah, and then it was.
And then it went, and then it was.
Yeah, I remember.
And then it was given to rugby, and now it's the CFL.
Yeah, but the fact that like the CFL became like was the start of a merger.
Mm-hmm.
Like the CFL started because of a merger in like 1958. So yeah, the Grey Cup's been given out for 100 plus years. CFL has been only around since like late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
So it's one of those history things that kind of quirk me when people are like, "Oh, the CFL's been around for 100 years." It hasn't been. It's only been around for like 50 years.
And I only said that earlier because that's what Trevor Harris said, by the way, when I was quoting Harris.
Yeah, I know. But it bugs me because like it's like I got into an argument with someone about it, basically being like, you know, the Rough Riders won a couple of Grey Cups before the CFL merged and whatnot. Like
that was rugby then still when they won those.
Yeah. So I think you keep the Grey Cup, make it your league championship. I don't care. It has to be part of it.
Yeah. Like the trophy itself is, I think last year was the 107th Grey Cup. So that trophy, there was 2 years where it wasn't handed. So that actual cup is now almost 110 years old. Yep. That history cannot be forgotten. So if there's any hill that I am willing to die on for this, if the two leagues merge, it's the Grey Cup. Because I don't care what you think you can put together that's better, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or Randy Ambrosie, nothing is better than the Grey Cup.
No,
not a single trophy you could come up with would be better.
Here's the thing. I can understand the want and maybe the desire to bring something fresh in. I can understand that. Really, I do. And maybe you can make the argument, okay, you've been around for 107 years or whatever. Maybe it's time to retire you.
They just updated it, though. It's not like it's an old-looking trophy. It's just the bowl that's old.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the fan stand and whatnot, they're not going to retire it. They're not going to change it. But I could definitely see the desire to kind of make something more sleek, something like more, I wouldn't say iconic because the Grey Cup in and of itself is iconic,
okay,
right?
So I'll give you this, right? If you want to do something to it, I don't care. If the bowl on the top stays, I don't care what you do to it. Because the bowl on the top is the only thing that's historical, right? The new Grey Cup has been handed out one time. Once. Yeah. Nobody cares. It's the bowl that matters.
Yeah, I think overall, like personally, I can see them retiring it. I do. Like it is something I think if you ask, I think if you go to any league, especially the NHL, the CHL, and the CFL, have they talked about retiring the respective championship trophies and introducing new ones? I feel like the answer is yes.
Well, okay, so it's happened, though. It's happened. The Stanley Cup has gone through so many changes, right? It used to be just the bowl. Then it was a couple of rings underneath it. And then it was you remember when it was this massive, like, long thing?
Yeah, and then
they changed the body off to be... So, like, but you can do whatever you want.
That's not retiring. Like, I think if you were to look at the actual, like, bowl, like, retire the bowl...
I doubt they've ever talked about that in the NHL, by the way.
I feel like they have. I definitely feel like there's been... In every major league, there has to be a point where you're looking at how things are done, and it has to be at least brought up. It may not have been like a serious, like, long discussion. It could have been like, you know, what's everyone's thoughts about maybe introducing a new championship trophy, introducing a new conference trophy, right? I feel like as a league, it would be stupid not to at least discuss it, because how often, like, I think at one time, once we hit like 200 trophies, like people are going to start getting bored of it. I think there's going to be a time where the meaning kind of starts to dwindle on these championships.
I disagree. I think if the NHL ever retired the Stanley Cup, people would be so mad. If the CFL ever retired the Grey Cup, I think people will be mad. In terms of, like,
be mad depending on, like, at first, but I think depending on the trophy they brought in, they'd get over it.
Look, there's the two worst trophies in sports are the Lombardi Trophy and the World Series trophy. And
Those
then
are just ugly.
closely following, though, is the Larry O'Brien. And to me, why do they suck? Because they're reproduced garbage.
I mean, I can understand the desire for teams that want to keep their trophies in house, right?
Too bad, win it again.
Like I can
Don't suck.
understand. No, because it's a pitch, right? It's a free agency pitch. Imagine, like, okay, for example, Montreal. You're a Montreal fan.
Mhm.
Imagine the kind. I mean, they haven't won anything recently, but imagine walking in to this wall of awards and seeing replicas or whatever you want.
Well, so they do.
you know,
They
of
do have the
state-
replicas.
They do at the
They
arena.
do. Yeah, at the arena. So if you look at pictures, I believe it's down by the locker room. They have all 24 cups. They're smaller versions, but they have them all on a wall.
I did not know that. I mean, I'm not a Montreal fan, so I would be very like.
Yeah, they do. Back when they were in the arena for like pre-game interviews and stuff like that, and John Liu was actually in the arena for his TV segment, it was always behind him.
Huh. Yeah. See, I don't follow Montreal, so I would have.
So that's like they have
but
that,
again, it's a pitch. It's a pitch. You get to see the team's history, the team's winning history.
Like, sure, it's cool and all, and I can see like where you're coming from with why you want those, but for the NFL, like they never really had like a truly iconic trophy that was handed out each year, right? Same with
No,
baseball.
not
They
really.
never really had something that was handed out each and every year. They just kind of made a new one every year. The CFL doesn't do that, and the NHL doesn't do that. I would really, really be mad if the CFL started doing that.
I don't think they would start handing out new things every year, but I definitely feel like there's going to come a time where they're going to look at the Grey Cup and be like, okay, we're going to retire the Grey Cup. 150 years of awarding the Grey Cup. You may want to look at retiring it.
The day that I don't get chills when the Mounties are walking the Grey Cup down the stands to the field, the day that I don't get chills when I see that is the day that I will stop watching football.
I mean, to be fair, I've kind of grown tired of it, but I've
Never.
also been watching football a lot longer than you.
Never. I'll never get tired of seeing that. I'll
Like,
never get tired of watching the guy in the white gloves pull the Stanley Cup out of this case. Never.
Yeah. See, for the Grey Cup, walking into Mounties, it lost its touch a long time ago for me. I don't know. It just did. I don't know why. I understand the reason for it, and it looks nice. Like, it's cool, like when you're at the game and whatnot. But I don't know. It doesn't really do anything for me.
You were the outlier, Shane. You were
What?
the outlier. You were the outlier in this situation.
At least I'm not a liar.
Okay. Recap of everything today, right? For me, let's have an open mind about this, please. Like, I just think that it's important to at least listen to what the plan is here. If you decide that you don't like the direction it's going, that's fine. If a rule changes that you don't like, fine. Okay, you can complain about it. You can do whatever you want. Then, if you want to stop watching, that's up to you. Okay. All I ask is that you at least listen to what's going to happen here before you start on the I'm done watching. I'm never going to watch another CFL game in my life train.
Yeah, I agree. Like that's one thing I agree on is that like I'm not gonna jump down anyone's throat for this yet. Honestly, like I have no reason to. But I'm definitely interested to see what's going on.
Like right now, it's just a conversation. We know nothing. We only learn that they're talking about how to grow football so far. So what does that mean? Does that mean a merger? Does that mean they're going to market together? Does that mean they're going to have a development structure? Who knows what it means, right? Like let's just relax. Like everybody's gotten a little bit excited and carried away with this one recently, so take a step back, breathe a little bit. Nothing that happens in the next couple of days is going to change much. This is going to be a long process, so just chill. Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing to get hung up on at this point, honestly. I'm interested. I'm excited to see what they do and how they make this work. Honestly, like I think that's the one thing I'm interested in is like,
me too.
um, how are they going to make this work and what are they going to do? And those are the questions I have. But
Yep.
I'm not overreacting, thinking this is the end of the world and this is the end of the CFL.
Yeah, and you know what, Shane? Too, if they do merge, that means more people for us to reach and more people to listen to our podcast. So that's amazing.
Yeah, we're gonna have some players on. We're gonna need some players on.
I bet you Derek Dennis ends up back on our show in a couple of weeks. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, 100%. I would be disappointed if he's not.
Exactly. So
Him, we're gonna get Richie Leone, a couple of other guys.
yeah,
But
and we still got the draft's coming up soon too. When does that happen?
and play early May.
Early May.
Because it's probably gonna be the first weekend or the first it's gonna be virtual, so I'm expecting it to be on like a Tuesday again. And it's probably gonna be like the first Tuesday after the NFL draft.
Yeah. Well, we'll have
Because then we're gonna have.
It doesn't feel like long ago at all that we streamed for the draft.
It's literally gonna be. It's my expectation, honestly, is because I think the NFL drafts like the first weekend of May.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of the NFL, real quick, the Bills have been busy, eh?
I noticed that.
Micah Hyde got re-signed, and then John Brown and Quentin Jefferson got released, and then they re-signed Matt Milano to like a ridiculous contract today. It's a 4-year contract or whatever. They're paying him $5 million this year.
Yeah,
and it ends at 10.
Yeah, Matt, Eric Fisher getting released by KC, like their top 2 starting tackles getting released.
Okay, so this is the other thing I want to throw out there before we sign off. How big would it be for the 2 leagues to merge together, maybe get some more money, and all at the time where the NFL's cap is shrinking, and not shrinking by a small margin, it's shrinking by like $25 million.
Yeah, so what is that? Didn't it go from 195 to 182?
Something, I think it's more than that. I think it was supposed to be up into the 210s.
Yeah, but last year's cap was 195, and this year's cap's like 182.
Yeah. This year's cap was supposed to be 210 or something like that.
Yeah,
and it's gone way down. So how big is that? Like, what difference does it make in terms of maybe a guy who's going for an NFL practice roster spot kind of thing? You know, like who gets left out of the mix here that ends up
veterans
in the CFL?
A lot of guys, honestly. There could be a lot of university players, like a lot of NCAA players, and a lot of NFL veterans. I mean, we've already seen a couple of NFL veterans sign in the CFL.
Yeah,
and not some like small names, like some relatively bigger NFL names have signed in the CFL.
That's a bombshell, Shane. Right before the end of our episode, what do you think about that?
So there's another possibility. How about CFL plays its fall schedule as it is, with its rules, and the CFL enters teams into the XFL Spring League playing its rules? I don't know. I don't feel like you'd be able to do it.
I feel like that'd be tough. Very tough. I won't say no to that.
I just don't see them being able to do it.
I wonder, it could also be more likely that if that's the way that this goes, that it's more of a, hey, let's share players.
Yeah. So the draft is April 29th through the 1st.
Okay.
I could see the CFL draft. I don't think there's actually like a specific date set for it. From what I've seen.
Yeah. Hey, we'll have to talk to Zach and Dakota again, as well.
Yeah.
Get the inside scoop on the OUA guys.
Yeah. No, it literally just says it's sometime in the spring. I would not be like, they still need to do the draft lottery because that's what's happening. They have a draft lottery this year and whatnot.
Well, they've already done it.
Oh yeah, they did. I totally forgot about that.
Hamilton has the first pick, I think.
Yeah, I honestly totally forgot.
Just what they need, eh? I mean, it's not like it's a big deal or anything, but just what they need.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally forgot that they already did the draft lottery. It's been so long. Yeah, they have 2 picks. They have the 1st and the 9th pick. But no, looking at the calendar, if it follows anything like last year, I would not be surprised, honestly, to see the draft on May 4th, rookies reporting on May 9th.
Yeah, well, I don't think we'll start on time, but
well, no, I think this is like me being optimistic of like an actual start date, like training camp starting at the end of May or middle of May. Because the first preseason game's May 21st?
Yeah, I expect it. To me, I expect about a month pushback for now, and then we'll see where we're at come that.
Like, I actually have I made a graphic that I have to post. I keep forgetting to post it. Yeah, May 23rd is the first preseason game.
Right.
So,
hey, we're getting there slowly. Hopefully, we actually play this time.
Yeah, I would assume. Excuse me, that like, if it is like a May 9th, rookies report to camp, and then 6 veterans report to camp, we'd be on par for the start of the regular season, with the first game being the 23rd. I would assume that all of this will be announced sometime within the next month or so. Like, I would expect it to be announced probably like early April on what's going on.
Yeah. Well, they got to figure it out soon. I really don't expect them to start on time just with where we're at in terms of being able to get fans in the stands. I think by the way, did you see today that the Texas Rangers have approved 100% capacity crowds?
For at least the home opener, and then they'll adjust it afterwards?
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Dude, they don't care.
If the CFL, I think the CFL has to be willing to start the season on time. If there is some sort of agreement with the provincial governments already, that we'll do the preseason, we'll do the first 3 weeks of the preseason, and then because the Edmonton Oilers have put in a proposal for, I think it's like 15% capacity, 10% capacity.
Yeah, and if you're going outside, it'll only be easier.
So if Edmonton, if you're the EE football team, you're looking at that being like, okay, if they're going to do this, then we'll ask for 10%.
Yeah.
And then if you can get a permission, okay, you can have 10% starting your first home game in June. If you're willing, like if the CFL is willing to play the preseason without fans,
which they should be, because let's be real, how many fans actually turn up for a preseason game?
Yeah, like go play the preseason game without fans and then review it afterwards. Kind of like, okay, you'll be able to have 10% minimum at your home opener. If things go better than expected, we might raise that kind of thing. Yeah. I would not be surprised if there's some sort of agreement like that in place.
Yeah. Well, we've come to pretty much the end here, and
full hour of CFL, XFL content. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for tuning in. Remember, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, 13th Man Podcast. Check out our website, 13thmanpodcast.com, and our YouTube page, 13th Man CFL Podcast. Give us a follow, like the video, share it with your friends who love the CFL and the XFL. Follow myself, Shane_Ryan97, Frankie at HPR, Frankie_13.
No.
What?
HPR_Frankie13.
Oh, man. Your ad is too confusing for me to remember right now.
I don't know how you can't remember it, man.
We don't actually interact with Twitter anymore. Like, we're completely we're 2 different fan bases for hockey, and there's no football really to talk about, so we don't really interact with each other.
Here, I'll put it up on the screen. There we go.
There we go. That makes sense. But thank you all for tuning in. We will be back live next week with a brand new episode of the 13th Man Podcast. If there's anything you want us to discuss, any questions, you can leave it down in the comments below on this video. Let us know on Twitter. Shoot us a message. And we are still looking for writers. If you are interested in being a content writer, or even if you want to join as a podcast covering a certain team, let us know. We are interested in expanding our group of people. We have some fantastic writers. Thank you all for joining us. We will catch you back here next week.